Hello, welcome to our next lesson, and this is lesson number 12. My name is Wejuli Moses, as you can all see right there, and we are going to work on this lesson. This is our tutorial number 12, and we are still working on the criteria or on queries. This time around we are still working on the date criteria, just like in the previous lesson. Now here we are given a question that you're supposed to attempt, and you're told to create a table, a database called Comtech Academy with a table called employee table. And after creating that, we are going to create queries that will return the following. Well, the first one is employees who were born before 1970. Of course, we are going to save it as before 1970. Then employees who were born after 1960, and we are going to save it as after 1960. Then employees who are above 50 years of age, employees who are below 50 years, then employees born between 1960 and 1970. So those are our queries that we're going to create in this particular tutorial. And now let's take a look at our database and see what we are supposed to do. Now here our database is already created, Comtech Academy, with the employee table as our table that we were told to create, and we are going to straight away go into creating the queries that have been asked of us. The first query says we retrieve employees who were born before 1970. Now employees who were born before 1970, we go and create our query. Then we add the fields. We're going to take all the fields, of course. Then we are on date of birth, and the criteria says, the query says, or the question says, those who were born before 1970. I think that is it. Yes, 1970. So we come and say, yeah. Then we are going to say from date of birth. That is the field we are going to use. Remember, whatever is typed down here as the field name is what you type here exactly. And don't forget the purpose of the square brackets. We said they are purposely used to refer to an existing field, and that's why we use them like that. Then we are saying this year should be before 1970. So we say before 1970. Then after that we run our query, and indeed all these members here were born before 1970. So that gives us that returns what we are supposed to actually get in this query. So we come and save it as before 1970. Now, just another way in which you can create that query without actually having this, without having this as our criteria, we can as well, that is the criteria we have, we can as well also create this in a different way. So we come and look at this. We have another option here. Then we go and we instead say, in this criteria we are going to have date part, and in this case the part we are referring to is year, from which field, date of birth, and the year should be less than 1970. That is also another criteria that we can write for that very query. So when we run this one here, we also get the same results. So it's upon you to actually choose which one is best for you. So we can as well save it as 1970. I'm just going to alter this so that it can be saved as well. So those two criteria can be created for the same query, or they can be used for the same query. Then let's go to the next. Let's go to the next query, which says employees who were born after 1960. I think that one is now very clear. Everyone can do 1960. If the other one was before 1970, then what changes is only the year here, and instead we use a greater sign, a greater than sign for 1960 because it's after. Now, employees who are above 50 years of age. Now, these ones are above 50 years. It's not the year they were born, but the age is now what this criteria is looking for. And this is what we are going to do. Watch clearly. We are going to go and create the criteria. We're going to create, the query. So we add the table. We add all the fields like this. Now remember, we are dealing with age. Here we are having date of birth, but we need age. So what we do, we create a new field. Now I just want to zoom this so that everyone can see what we are doing. We say it's now age. That is a new field. Now those two, that sign, or we can call it a symbol, is very, very important. You forget it, you don't get results. Then we are going to say like this. We are going to use a function called dateDiff. So we say dateDiff, create a bracket, then now say we are going to consider the years. Those 4 Y's represent the year, comma. What are we subtracting? Date of birth. So we come and say, we say date of birth is an existing field. So that's date of birth. We close the brackets. Then after that we say from date of birth, what else are we going to subtract? The current year. So current year minus the date of birth. Now current year is represented by now. So we say, we close now, open the bracket and close, and then we close the outer bracket, which is this one here. So after that, we now come and say okay. Now what we have just typed gives us the age. You can see the age is returned, but remember our criteria says those who are above 50 years. Above 50 years. So we go and look for above 50 years. Then we say this is greater than 50. And when we try to run this, indeed you can see that all these people here are above 60 years of age. So that is how we create that query. So we come and save it as above 50. Okay, now we are also going to look at another employees who are below 50 years. That one is the direct opposite of what we've just we've just created. Now I'm going to look at the last one, employees born between 1960 and 1970. So that is going to be our next criteria and the last for this particular tutorial. Now we create a query to display employees who were born between 1960 and 1970 as per our question here. So we shall come and say, yeah, it's what we are considering. Maybe let me just zoom this one here so that everyone is able to see whatever I'm doing. Yeah, and which year are we considering? We are considering the year, but from which field? The field is called date of birth. Date of birth. So we come and say from date of birth, and after doing that, we now say the year should be between 1960 1960 and 1970. So members who were born between 1960 and 1970, which is the year, are the ones who are going to be displayed. So we come and run our query, and this is what we get as the output or as a return. So that's how we play around with the criteria to get whatever we want. And that also brings us to the end of this. We are going to, in our preceding lessons, look at more of the criteria and see what we can do about them. But just basically, that is what we do with these criteria. Have a nice time. Thanks for listening. Don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel.